Welcome to Beyond the Backlog, and today we're trying something a little different here. We're
What?
gonna do
New things? Different things?
heaven forbid. Well, videos are too long, man. We need something shorter. So today we're just going to do a couple different stories, one each, just on backlog experience in general, and we're going to talk about a game that we played. I at least wound up enjoying it. I'm not too sure about yours. That just took too dang long to start.
Yeah, like this is our official, something that was on our backlog for years potentially that we tried multiple times and eventually were able to conquer.
Yeah. Mine, I'll start 'cause my story isn't near as interesting or glorious.
As dear to your heart.
Yeah. Well, I was going through my favorite games, and the only one that really stuck out to me in terms of, it took too long to play this, was Stardew Valley. And I've mentioned that game before. I think it's great. Farming sim for those who don't really know it. But I really liked Animal Crossing in that growing up. I had a couple Harvest Moon games on the GameCube, but it was really weird. I liked one and didn't really like the other. But those kind of games are always games where you just kind of fall off of them, right? You do enough, you play them consistently, and then you're just like, I'm kind of done.
Yeah, like if you don't get to the end credits, you don't really cry yourself to sleep about it.
Yeah, and I used to say this a lot with RPGs as well. I used to say I had 2 weeks, right? I had 2 weeks from game start to beat a game, or I just wouldn't, right? I knew myself well enough. I knew, I'll just fall out of it. I just won't do anything like that. So I knew with Animal Crossing, famously this year, I did Animal Crossing New Horizons. I was like, I'm going to beat this game because I just dropped it. I'm going to finally complete my house. And then I put it in, played for 10 minutes, and realized, I was at that point, I just didn't hit the last couple A presses.
And it almost makes you wonder, why did it take me so long to actually do this?
Right? So you just you flow in and out of it. But Stardew Valley, it came out, I think, 2016. But I tried 3 different times to beat it, or even really start it. Because the first time I was like, this game's supposed to be really good. Every time I look up, I kind of feel like Harvest Moon. What games look best with Harvest Moon? They're like, but Stardew.
What was the timeline on this?
Oh, we're probably talking 2019.
Okay.
Because I think at the time there was a group of friends that I had that all kind of got into it. I was like, that's kind of a cool way, right? We're kind of out of university. It's a point to kind of keep in touch with some people, still chat with some people. But I just couldn't get into it, right? You go around, you start your first couple days, you buy your seeds, you get your seeds, you plant things. But I didn't see what would hook me, right? Because I'm someone who likes objective hunting. I like having a clear goal. It's why I'll play Minecraft. I like Minecraft, but after about a week, I go, can we just beat the game and then be done with it, right? I've never been interested in the creative crafting, any type of that with games. I notoriously just use base name, base character models for most games. I've never cared about it.
So it was finishing the game partially off-putting to you because of the repetitive nature of what had to be done?
Yeah, it just seemed why?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I make a Dark Souls character. Why do I care what it looks like? I'm just going to go and smash things that's in armor anyways. Link is Link. Why am I trying to use any other name? Right? So the first time it just kind of petered out because of that. The second time I was like, you know what? Let's try it again. And I did it. I think I got a month and a half in. So we're talking 5-10 hours or so. And then it just kind of happened again. Right? 'Cause you're like, okay, I did some of the fishing. I like the fishing. I like the mining. As a side note, apparently really liking the fishing game of it is a hot take. But I kind of find it soothing. A little bit more skill intensive than just the Animal Crossings. You throw a fishing hook in, you wait for the bobber to go down.
It's reaction time.
Fish.
Come on.
Exactly. But with this one, you actually have to watch the fish goes up and down a bar, and you have to match your A button press or your clicks with the fish moving up and down to keep it in a range. So I kind of just find that cool. But it again just didn't catch me.
And were you about the same spot you were the first time when you?
No, I
gave
had
it up?
even blown past that. The first time I stopped was actually like 2 days.
Oh, okay.
2 days in games. Like I played the thing for 15 minutes and I said, nah. And I wonder if it was just, I wanted something maybe a little bit more high octane.
Okay, so what changed when you came back to it and suddenly couldn't stop?
Yeah, all of a sudden I played like 80 hours in, I think it was February of 2023. I think one of it was the combat, right? So there's an area of the game where you can just fight things. And then I was like, okay, well, that's something else a little bit extra I can do. But I think it's just, I got into the world a little bit, right? Because the characters are interesting. And I think why I didn't really do that is Animal Crossing, Harvest Moon. You don't really play them for the characters, right? And their stories. Animal Crossing, there's like a group of personalities and they all respond the same way if they're all part of the same personality grouping.
Was where I think in both of those franchises, I'm like, I don't care about most of the villagers in Animal Crossing, but there's a few that if I see them, I'm like, oh, yeah, goody. Same in Harvest Moon, where I'm like, pretty much I'll pick my one that I want to pursue as the love interest, and I couldn't really care less about most of the others.
Exactly. But the game just does such a good job at making most of the marriage candidates intriguing enough for me, right? They all kind of have their little niches, their own cliques, but there is something kind of for everyone. Each of the stories, I started getting to heart conversations, which for that you gift characters goods that they like you more, and then at certain points you'll have scenes with them. And those did a really good job at making pretty well every character like really interesting.
Okay.
And then it was just time. I put enough time into it where I'm like, okay, well now I want to
past that point of no return now.
Exactly. And I want to do everything. Right. So I wound up getting all the combat goals. I wound up delivering everything, shipping everything, selling everything. Because I figured, you know what, if I'm playing this game, if I'm into it, I am going to put everything into it. And then it eventually reached a point where I started talking again with an old high school friend of mine, where we talk on and off, but now we actually have something in common. Like, yo, you want to do like a co-op farm? So it's just nice to be able to every couple of weeks just go and reconnect with someone again with that. Then you can chat, talk about things, and then just kind of keep playing through.
Well, and I know you're also somebody who likes to just have something you can pick up and play for a few minutes on the side.
Yeah, you can play it like each Stardew day, I think, is like 15 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of just do a day or two if I just have a spare bit of time, and then drop it, pick it up in a couple days, because you reach a point where you go, oh, you know what? I got a bit of time. Now the concern I have is I've done everything. Right, so what's going to keep me doing it again? But there's an update that's coming out a couple of weeks from now, middle of March. I'm hoping that's enough to kind of go through again.
Because there was definitely that shift there where, like, obviously if you didn't really get hooked the first time, but eventually you're at this point where you finished the game but wanted to do it again just to get all the achievements.
No, exactly. So it hits the collector in me, is I think what it did as well. Because there's 68 fish, I think, and 135 crafting. So I actually went and downloaded a mod for the PC game that tracked everything. So I could see, I was like, okay, these I need, this I still need, these I still need to craft. And it would light up green if it's like, no, you can do this with what you have in the chests. So that was kind of nice just to be able to go through it all.
Yeah, that extra little bit of organization goes a long way.
Yeah, but of all of the top 20, 25 games of my favorites, it's really the only one that I was kind of wishy-washy in to start.
Okay.
Everything else I've kind of just played, got really into, and was like, yeah, this is great.
Was there ever a time where you thought to yourself, I don't think I'm ever going to actually finish this?
I don't think so. I think I hit a point of no return where I was like, well, I just need to go through and do it. Because it was kind of astounding where I think because of its pick up and play nature, it really helped. Because it didn't feel like I was going to miss out on anything if I missed a week, right? If I got busy and I just couldn't get back into it, I would know, okay, well, it's a farming game. I just wait for my crops to grow and then cut them down, sell them, make more crops.
Absolutely. All right. Mine is not necessarily a top 20 of all time in my world here, but it is the sequel to my number one most favoritist game of all time, which is why, as I said, is very near and dear to my heart. So we're going to talk about Banjo-Tooie for a minute here. So I don't even know when I actually acquired Banjo-Kazooie. I just always remember having it, and I remember playing it and loving the crap out of it. To this day, I know where every single note, every single jiggy, every detail of that game. And I knew there was a sequel. I don't know why I didn't pursue it sooner. But my first experience with it was I actually rented it. I couldn't tell you the year. I would have maybe been 8 or 9 years old. So we're talking just after the GameCube came out. I remember going to Microplay and renting it for a weekend. And I got into it. I remember just immediately being blown away by how slow the game ran. It looks phenomenal for a Nintendo 64 game, but the frame rate it chugs, and it is hard to get into, especially when I was going over to my friends and playing hot new games on GameCube, going from playing Melee, which feels like it's running too fast, to Banjo-Tooie, where I'm I literally feel like I'm walking through molasses.
You almost feel like your N64 is overheating.
Yeah, and something about that just made it so I remember getting to the first world, Mayhem Temple, and exploring around a bit, and I just couldn't care. I just did not care. I think I tried my first person shooter perspective mode inside the temple and was this just isn't Banjo-Kazooie. And I didn't play it again. And I returned it. Didn't think about it for a long time. Round 2. So in high school, I was dating a girl who we talked about how much we each loved Banjo-Kazooie and just had to go through and play it together. And we were doing like how you and I do, where we were passing the controller back and forth, doing a few objectives. And she also knew about Banjo-Tooie, but had never played it. And I told her about my brief experience, and she's like, "Oh, I would love to try that." So, romantic old me on her birthday got her Banjo-Tooie, and we tried to sit down and play it, passing it back and forth. And she had a lot of the same comments I did, but we got through the first World Mayhem Temple. I remember doing Glitter Gulch Mine and being I can see the unique theming here. These levels feel distinct and they feel unique, and it feels different from Banjo-Kazooie worlds. But some of those basic features, the 5 Jinjos per world, the 100 individual notes to collect per world, were kind of being replaced. And I do appreciate that you don't have to get all 100 notes in one go to actually save your score, but it just made revisiting a world feel just empty.
You almost lost a bit of the essence of Banjo-Kazooie, where it didn't feel as self-contained, right?
Yeah, and even just looking at the jiggies themselves don't have little eyeballs, googly eyes on them anymore, and they don't talk to you when you pick them up the first time. I'm as I said, it's fundamentally a bigger, better Banjo-Kazooie, just it felt a little off. And we got to Witchy World, which is still, in my opinion, the best world. And I was oh, now we're cooking. This is the one. And the boss battle there, where you're flying around shooting a big inflatable dinosaur in a big circus tent. I'm this is fun. This is interesting. And we maybe played 2 more worlds after that before giving up, because we're we just weren't having enough fun.
Yeah.
Trying to 100% it. And especially even 15 years ago when we were doing this and trying to use a guide to go through it, it was almost impossible, just a text guide to try and describe where in like Jolly Roger Lagoon, because it's like a multiple horizontal layers where you have to like dive down and swim across, and just trying to decipher where it's trying to tell you to go on a text guide alone.
Shout out old game FAQs.
Yep, it was exactly a game FAQ. And we just couldn't 100% the worlds, and we're realizing, oh, we don't have the abilities yet to do it, because there's a lot of backtracking, which is usually a huge deterrent for a lot of people.
Yep.
The nail in the coffin was Grunty Industries, which I think is technically world 6 out of 8. So that's how far I got.
Okay.
We just could not do it.
Now, as someone who has never played TUI, would it be possible to really do the game in like 2 rounds? Right? So like you play through, you beat everything, and then go back through. Because I wonder, because anything like that where you can't complete everything is kind of annoying.
It is. And if you even just want to get like the final health upgrade or something, your wiggle room is you can only miss 2 puzzle pieces.
Jeez.
And just like the first Banjo-Kazooie, where it's like your best upgrades at the end, like doubling your arrow, feather, and egg ammo is locked behind getting a bunch of the notes. This one just, you're more likely to collect all the notes because you don't have to get them all in one go, but the rewards weren't as meaningful.
Yeah.
So you were inherently, just by exploring the whole place, probably getting all the notes, and they didn't really put any significant rewards behind those. But I finally sat down to play it as an adult when I was probably living in this apartment building with my father, and it was just the 2 of us, and I just decided I'm going to go for it. I'm going to actually sit down and play it. And I could not bring myself to 100% it. I did beat the game, and I remember thinking, boss battles, fantastic. The mini games, it's just a lot of them. It almost is like the Donkey Kong 64 style, where there's like every mini game has 3 rounds, and each one gets progressively more difficult. And some of those like 3rd difficulty ones just feel like it's just cheating, making it unnecessarily more difficult. And even after having actually finally beat the game, I remember thinking to myself, I don't remember any specific tasks I had to do in these worlds. And I don't remember the abilities that I learned along the way. I don't remember the characters I interacted with.
Yeah, it's just I beat the game.
Mm-hmm. But like the themes of the worlds did stand out. Like I remember each world. I just don't remember what I had to do. And if you were to show me, obviously I can think of it now, but I'm like, there's a part in like the dinosaur world Pterodactyl Land where there's just a foot stomping on the ground, and it'll crush you immediately if you get crushed by it. But you have to split up Banjo and Kazooie, and just go as Kazooie, grab some like dash like shoes to make it into each individual like footprint hole before you get crushed. And until I played through the game like 3 more times, every time I saw that, I'm like, I don't remember what to do here.
Yeah.
So there's just lots of those where even if I was to play it again now, I wouldn't remember what I did. But then I finally, when I was live streaming, played it again, and something just clicked in my head where I'm like, oh, I get it. And instead of treating it like a Banjo-Kazooie game, I treated it like, this is Banjo-Kazooie, but after Rare had done Donkey Kong 64.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So,
because timeline-wise, that shakes out.
So imagine Donkey Kong 64, but instead of having to go back to one spot with 5 different Kongs and play each of their instruments and open up a door and watch the cutscene and go in and get a golden banana for every single one, I'm like, this is like a more succinct, to the point Donkey Kong 64. And once I realized that it wasn't a bigger, better Banjo, it was a more to the point DK64, I actually really started to appreciate it. And I realized, like, this is not a game that wants you to rush through it. This is a 20, 30 hour adventure.
Yeah.
It's not, because I can play and beat Banjo-Kazooie in like 3 hours or less. that's what I want from another Banjo-Kazooie style game, but that's not what it is.
Yeah.
And I think it also kind of helped me frame it in my mind a little better for now that we gave Nuts and Bolts a little bit of a preview. I can understand it from like the mission-based structure a little better.
Yeah, because Nuts and Bolts, spoilers, is kind of fun, right? I don't get as much of the hate for the game, but if you frame it, I guess how you did, where it's like, but it's not Banjo-Kazooie, then it's a very fair point.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the problem with Banjo-Kazooie as a franchise is I'm like, there's 4 different games that have the Banjo-Kazooie name. And other than the original Banjo-Kazooie, the other 3 don't feel like follow-ups to Banjo-Kazooie. They're just other games that are just happen to be collectathon platformers. And like the one on Game Boy Advanced, Grunty's Revenge, is probably my second favorite one, just because it does play a lot like the first, but it's so hard to do in a 2D like plane. But they did a really good job with it. But 2E, I don't think I just want to pick up and play again. But I think if you're a fan of the first Banjo-Kazooie, if you're a fan of Donkey Kong 64 especially, definitely give it a shot. And if you dislike either of those games, do not touch 2E. You are not going to have fun.
Yeah, well, it won't be a good time. Do you think the naming has something to do with the issue too? Right? Because like Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie.
It does put the expectation there.
Yeah.
And I think everyone expected just another Banjo-Kazooie, and Rare went a little more ambitious with it, which works in their favor and against them, depending on how you want to look at it. Because it's like, you know, something like the Zelda or Mario series, they have to innovate and come up with new ideas.
What I was thinking, right? Because you have, you know, The Legend of Zelda, you know, : blah, Super Mario, blah, right? So they're kind of the same, they're kind of similar, but it does have different worlds, different mechanics in each of the games. And I wonder if they just did like Banjo-Kazooie and then Banjo-Kazooie, comma.
Yeah, and that's when like it has the same characters, like the same like humor is there. I don't have that nostalgia for it, and trying to play it now, it just runs poorer than the first one. But I think the actual game under there with like these crazy mini games, these cool boss battles that I would like if they were to make another Banjo-Kazooie, absolutely got to do that again.
Yeah.
Just these big worlds full of all these cool platforming challenges. There's a really cool, fun game under there. It's just calling it Banjo-Tooie makes me think one particular thing, and it's not that.
Yeah. There we have it. We talked backlog.
Yeah, we actually talked about our backlogs.
Right?
Wow.
But let us know if that's you like this, kind of like more long form stuff. What we should also do too, coming up, is getting into how we backlog, right? Like how we set games, kind of why we pick the games we do, and hope that we have an answer other than, we just kind of feel like it.
And obviously we're going to talk more about Banjo-Kazooie 2 and Donkey Kong 64 when we talk about Rare.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's going to be great whenever it happens.
Yeah.
But have a good day, good evening, good night, whatever works best for you. And we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening.